Hello and welcome to our Food Reserve. My name is Alec Mugala in Lusaka, and thank you so much for joining us on this exciting edition of the program. Today, we'll look at a completely different aspect of the grain, and this is quality assurance. Lots of people do not know that at the Food Reserve Agency, Depot Mongwe in particular, we do have equipment that is used for quality assurance. A high-tech laboratory. Richard and Lukuta will take us through this high-tech, state-of-the-art equipment here at Mongwe Depot. Don't go away.
What we have here at Mongwe Depot is a food safety laboratory for the Food Reserve Agency. What we do here is grain quality analysis and certification. We also do quality assurance for clients.
Here at the lab, we receive samples from all the regions in Zambia. We've got 12 regions. So they send us samples here at the lab for analysis to check the grade of the maize. Mostly the samples we receive are maize samples. We also receive soya and rice. But our main focus is mostly maize samples. What happens is they send us samples here, we record them. The date the sample was delivered, the date was sampled, how many samples were sent before analysis. Then we bring them here in the lab. We analyze them. When we're done analyzing, we make a maize certificate, a grading certificate, which is signed by the supervisors. So these are our samples, the samples that we receive. The first thing, the sample should be in a sample bag. We use this bag because it's not easily ripped. We don't want samples to mix in a case where they're sending more than 3 samples. If they send just in an ordinary plastic bag, the soft one, it will rip and samples will mix.
This machine you see here is what is termed as a grain analyzer. It analyzes grain in terms of moisture and also the nutrients, including protein, which is contained in a specific grain.
We have a variety of grain that's analyzed, but we're looking at maize right now. It uses infrared to analyze different types of grain. So we have a number of grains starting from field peas, oats, rapeseed, rye, sorghum, soybeans, wheat, corn, and barley. Our interest is the corn, the maize grain. So I'll empty my maize grain into for the moisture. I have to make sure I fill it. Then I'll select my corn. Here it will show me, it's going to analyze the oil, dry matter, the protein matter, the moisture, and the starch. But my main interest is the moisture. Unless we have a client who wants to look at the oil, the protein, and the starch. But as Food Reserve, we mostly concentrate on the moisture. So as I select, then I'll run it. So this grain analyzer has a printer. It has a small printer here. It also has a keyboard. While it's analyzing, I'm supposed to enter the details of my sample that I received. I'll enter them using this keyboard and print the samples out. The depot is Kasama. The shade number, or the shade, is the black shade. The number of bags were 28,000. The marketing season, 2019. When I'm done, I'll enter this and print, have it printed. Then I can get my results from here. It will show me the details I have entered. So in this case, my moisture is 8.2%, which is okay, because here as Food Reserve, we look for moisture content of 12.5 and below. Anything above 12.5, we do not get that.
This piece of equipment you are seeing here is called a balance. It is used to take weights of different products, including grain. It is very important because for any analysis to take place in the lab, you will have to know the weight at different stages.
We weigh 250 grams of sample for us to analyze physically. Visually, I mean. So I'll tear that. I'll make sure I zero it. Then I'll pour my sample. I'll put this on a sieve. I have to sieve it to remove all the chaff and the foreign matter that it comes with. I want to analyze maize only, so I have to get rid of that foreign matter. So when I get my sample, my foreign matter, I put it back on the scale and weigh. In this case, this one has no weight and it's still 0. So after I've done that, I'll record. This is a sampling. This is a grading certificate for the lab. So I'll enter these details, the details that were on the sample. I'll enter the province, the district, the depot, date of sampling. All these are given to me on the sampling label. But in my case, I will have to add in the moisture content, which we got from the grain analyzer. You can also use this portable moisture meter. This is also a moisture meter that is used in the regions. For them, as they go out there in the field, they need to check the moisture before they bring the maize back. This is the maize that we, as food reserve, we need to buy. So even as the marketing season starts, we send these samples to all the regions. We send these samples to all the regions so that the MAs and the people in the region will educate the satellite depot clicks that will be receiving maize as we are buying. They need to show them the type of maize we are supposed to receive. So as the farmer brings maize, they will check it. They will check for all these and make sure that the maize that they are getting is only good maize. And it shouldn't have any of the shriveled, it shouldn't be broken, shouldn't be insect damage, discolored, or other colors. We want good maize, which is white in color. And we also have our rotten maize, so this we do not want. We have a falling number machine and the glutomatic index machine. So before we go to we start using those machines, we first have to prepare our samples. We come to the grinder. This is a grinder, or ichigayo. You bring your sample here, you pour it in this, you pour it in there. Once it starts to grind in there, it empties the sample through this. So we usually place a plastic at the bottom so that the sample that's coming out goes into the sample bag. We make sure the powder is, the sample that comes out after being ground, it should be fine, almost like fine powder. So after grinding, we get our samples, and the first place we come to is the falling number machine. So once your wheat is in the field, when it's time for harvest, you do not want that enzyme to start working in the field. You only want it to work after you have harvested your wheat samples and you've ground it, when you make a powder. The effect of it working in the field is that it starts breaking down the starch. It starts breaking down the starch into the sugars. So you have your wheat sprouting. Usually that happens when your wheat has reached, it has matured, and it's time for harvest, but you decide to leave it in the field for longer. So it will start sprouting and your enzyme activity will be high. Bakers do not want that wheat which has high enzyme activity. They want enzyme activity which is less, which only becomes active when you grind your wheat. So in a case where the falling number is 250, 300 going above, that means your sample is good, meaning your enzyme activity is less. So in a case where you have less amylase in your wheat, it's easy to add. That's why when we're baking, we have to add in some sugars, because what the amylase does, it will break down the starch into sugar. That sugar will be fed during baking, it will be fed to the yeast. so that your dough will rise. But in the case where you have so much sugar, it will be too much for the yeast. And in the case when you're baking, instead of your, for example, cake or bread, instead of it to rise, it will fall because it has too much sugar in it.
One of the things that we analyze here is gluten. Gluten is a very important component in food quality. It is responsible for telling you the elasticity of, for instance, bread. The higher it is, the better the flour is for baking. This machine you are seeing here, it is used for washing the starch, soluble starch and other soluble substances from the flour, which is used for baking. So when it washes there, we want to analyze that very important component, which is gluten, the extensivity or elasticity of the product, the end product that we shall have when we use that flour. So we wash out the soluble, we just get the gluten, and then we subject it to further tests. The further test, in order to get the gluten index, we are going to use centrifuge. This is a centrifuge. The centrifuge rotates the product at a very fast speed, such that all the remaining soluble components are taken out, and what we are left with is the gluten which we are looking for. So we get that gluten, and that's what we call the gluten index in this centrifuge. That gluten index is weighed after it is dried in that dryer. So that is very important. The client needs to know the quality of the flour that he's going to use to make any product out of it.
Here we have a heat sealer. This sealer is used to seal our samples, our plastics. When we put in our samples, we make sure our samples are properly sealed so that nothing goes in or comes out. After I'm done with all my apparatus, the washable apparatus, I'll wash all of them in our sinks here. My test tubes, my beakers, my jars, I'll wash them. After washing them, I'll put them in the oven. We use it for drying our apparatus. We leave them in here to dry, switch it on for a few minutes and then switch it off, so that our beakers and other apparatus will be clean instead of wiping, because after wiping we will leave some dirt on them. So we also use this oven to check for the moisture in our samples. In a case where our grain analyzer is down and the moisture meter is down, we can use this oven to get our moisture for our grain.
We conclude today's edition of our Food Reserve program, an appreciation of quality assurance at the Food Reserve Agency and Mungwe Depot in particular, with the state-of-the-art laboratory that is located here for all customers across the country that are dealing in grain. And this has been our program for today. Many thanks to Manyando, our coordinator, and Richard and Lukuta, who took us through this wonderful laboratory, and my camera person behind the camera, Agnes. My name is Alec Mugala. We wish to thank you for joining us, and God bless you. See you next time at the same time. Goodbye for now.